Welcome everybody. This is June 22nd, and this is SIG Windows regular weekly meeting. We are part of the CNCF, and so we follow the CNCF guidelines. And if you have any questions or concerns around those, please reach out to myself or any of the other leads. And yeah, we'll go ahead and get started today. Looks like the agenda is pretty light. If anybody has anything they want to add, go ahead and add it to the link or add it to the doc directly. Otherwise, we'll have a few minutes at the end to kind of bring it up, but I just dropped the link into the chat. And go ahead and quickly do intros. If anybody wants to introduce themselves, say hello. Give them a moment to let anybody speak up. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so announcements. Code freeze is July 8th, so we're just over 2 weeks out. So if you have any features or open PRs, make sure you ping us on them and let us know. You can drop it in Slack or bring it up at the meeting here next week, and we'll make sure we get some eyes on them. Does anybody have any that they're tracking at this point? I know Alvarez, you have a bug fix, and also you're working on the node log thing, but is there anything else out there? No? Okay, cool. All right, we'll go on to the agenda then. We have host process tests up. So I got those set up and merged on Thursday. If we go over here, you can see they're running, and other than a little YAML mess up on the first couple of runs, it looks pretty green for that particular test. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It just tests to make sure that the container itself does actually see the host. And so you can take a look at that test in particular. And yeah, it's up and running, and so we're making some progress there. If anybody has any questions.
Hey James, are we ready to say 20H2 is supported, or we're still? I know it's not with just the host process. I'm talking about just tests in general.
I think we actually do have 20H2. I think Mark did that right before he took off. I haven't monitored that test as much as some of the other tests. Yeah, so we do have the set of tests running against 20H2 here.
Should we think about declaring support for it in the support docs?
Yeah, we absolutely can. I think that was just maybe an oversight in actually making that. And I think actually Ravi had opened up a PR for that at some point. And
yeah, I remember him opening a PR for, I think, 2004. I don't think we added 20H2 at least. I can check, but okay.
Yep. Yeah. We can definitely open that up. These tests have been running and pretty solid for a while now.
Awesome.
Yes, the host process job in the grid is for 122. Host process is only enabled in 122. I think you need to have alpha 122 alpha 2 build to get those tests to work. The release notes say alpha 1, but I wasn't able to get it to work. When I used alpha 2 or the head, it worked fine. Oh yeah, and so Peter also said 20H2 on GC is working as well. So we've got that validation as well. Cool. Any other questions on those two? Cool. So I also enabled the Containerd 1.5 tests, just bumping that up to 1.15 for one of our tests to just see what it looks like. And there's 3 or 4 tests that fail pretty regularly. Luckily, Adelina and Claudio had already caught that. And for some of the work that they're doing with the CRI integration tests for Containerd. And so they've fixed that. And what we need to, if you are moving up to Container 1.5, you need to use the main branch of HCS shim. And so go ahead and use that. I don't know if Claudio or Adelina wants to just give a quick summary of maybe what happened with those tests.
Yeah, it was a simple, I mean, it was a bug where if you deleted, so you created a sandbox in Containerd, and then you created containers inside that sandbox. When you stopped one of the containers, the whole shim process died. Was actually closed. Not, it didn't die. Was closed. So that means that the sandbox and the other containers that could have been inside there were unusable. They not having a shim. In Containerd, this created a lot of problems with the CNI because endpoints were being leaked and stuff like that, and you couldn't just remove the sandbox. You have to go and delete endpoints and all that stuff. In Kubernetes, it wasn't that. I mean, it still failed, but you wouldn't have those leakages because Kubernetes does its own CNI cleanup. I mean, it has another path by which it creates and manages the endpoints for the containers. So yeah, basically that's it. The same bug manifests itself in a bunch of other, let's say, situations you would have seen it. It was the same thing, but manifests itself differently. But the main thing was this: the shim dying, being deleted.
Yeah, and this would also cause problems if, for some reason, one of the containers would fail, and which would mean that it would close. It would kill the entire pod, including other containers, and you wouldn't be able to recreate the same container in the same pod with the same name, with the same ID. But with the new HCM, that's gonna be fine. Yeah. We are gonna add some extra tests and checks for this particular issue in Containerd.
Awesome. Thanks for the summary there. If anybody hasn't seen that, we've added a new tab to the SIG Windows Containerd runtime up here. And we've now got all of the integration tests running for Containerd specifically. Looks like we have a couple that aren't quite there yet, but I know Claudio and Adelina are working hard on those. So thanks for all your work there. Yeah,
the failures there are something that you're seeing are something that we need to track. And it's an issue that we are looking into. The way it manifests, I don't think it affects Kubernetes, or it should affect Kubernetes. We're still looking into that, but it would be nice to have it fixed and have those tests green.
All right, any other questions before we move on to the next?
So yeah, I have a question regarding Containerd. So just wanted to check, is there any work for enhancing actually the pull time on Windows. To give a quick overview from our testing and enabling this on GCE, we still see that Containerd is a bit slower compared to Docker. For example, on the 20 H2 images, you can see Docker will be able to pull the server core in 5 to 6 minutes, but actually Docker will take around 8 minutes, even including that, the Defender is disabled, and we actually have the cleanup at the beginning of running the Containerd daemon itself, but still seems like, the Windows snapshotter in general is a bit 20-30% slower when getting an image on a fresh node. So just wanted to see if others see the same thing and if there anyone who is looking into improving this.
Okay, I know that we had an open issue on Microsoft, the issue repository, and we had fixed it for, or we had improved quite a bit, and we were looking for feedback if there was any other issues that people were seeing. So I'll see if I can find it here while I hand it over to Jay for the next item, and maybe you can comment there and give that feedback so that we can track it.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
What do I got? Okay. Array is building a new burrito, James. So, downstream we give, and I know OpenShift does this, right? I think Arvind or Ravi, I don't know if Ravi's here, but I know Arvind's here. And then we hit this with the Windows dev environments also, right? It's this real interesting issue that everybody keeps having, which is that we need to serve up the artifacts so people can build images or install things. And, in the dev environments, we see this because when you're mounting things into a hypervisor locally, that's a very expensive abstract operation. And so so I was just sitting around one day, it was late, me and Friedrich were kind of hacking on them. And I was like, we were just like, Jesus Christ, every time we remove a mount of a directory, it speeds things up by like 10 minutes, like literally, like it's ridiculous. And so we were just like, well, if we had a server inside the Linux VM that just served up the kubelet and all that after they were built, then it would be super easy to install everything from our Windows VM in our dev environments. But then it's like we have the same thing for customers, right? We give customers Image Builder and we tell them to install it and build their own Windows OS. And so we have the same problem, and we have a downstream solution to it. And I merged upstream a initial hack at a little artifact server. And after 3 weeks, I was able to convince folks to merge it or whatever. And I was like, I feel like this is valuable enough that it would be nice if we just owned it inside Windows so we could iterate on it quickly. And then once we really demonstrate that it's super valuable, if the Image Builder folks want it, we could push it up there. And so that was something me and Perry were talking about, and so that I just wanted to let folks know we were going to sort of try this out and make sure there's no objection to putting this in SIG Windows tools.
Yeah. Hey, Jay. So I just want to clarify that we don't do this in OpenShift. In OpenShift, what we do is we build all the artifacts that are needed to configure a Windows VM as a Windows worker within our operator image. And once the VM comes up, all we say is, which is why we have that other PR about using the cloud init sort of capabilities in Azure also. We use this sort of cloud init capabilities to configure the VM with SSH. And from that point on, that's all we need. We just want SSH and Docker configured in the VM.
Oh, so you SCP them from the image into the Windows VM?
Correct.
Okay, so you do the opposite of this. Okay.
Yeah,
exactly. Sorry, I thought you set up an artifact server and you pulled them from the Windows image. All right. So I'm
Yeah,
totally wrong. They don't do this in the OpenShift. That's wrong. Okay.
We do this in other parts of OpenShift, but for Windows, because we want it to be tightly coupled with the cluster version of Kubernetes, and given that our Windows edition is like a day two operation, we decided to go down this route.
Okay. Okay.
But
cool.
it's not I'm not saying I don't want this done or anything like that. I'm just clarifying that we don't do this in OpenShift.
You're not saying it's a bad idea. You're saying it's just useless for what you do.
Correct.
But
correct.
that's fine.
It just doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to what we do.
Okay. I still have two good reasons to do this. So I don't know. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. And if folks really think this is a bad idea, we could do this. Or no, I know nobody thinks it's a bad idea, but I just want to make sure, like, there are workarounds. Like, we could do this on a personal GitHub repo, or we could spend 5 weeks at a time, like merging it into upstream image builder in the hack directory. But I just feel like it's a very Windows thing, right? Like, this problem has never like punched me in the face this many times in such a short period of time until I started working on Windows. So that's what my thinking.
I don't know if I'm fully understanding. So let me go.
Yeah.
Check this out.
So it's basically image builder. When you're building a Windows image with image builder, you need to specify some URL endpoints to be able to download stuff. But if you're trying to build when you can't access the internet, or you want to build from local sources, it's a bit harder to make sure that you've got everything in one place. So this is basically just a way of creating a Docker container that contains everything you need to build a Windows image with image builder. And then my idea is that it'll auto generate the variables you need to then build a Windows image from that Docker container that's shared.
Okay.
In general, Jamie, image builder, I don't know if you use it at all. If you don't, have you ever used it before?
Tinkered with it, not much.
Okay, the whole thing with image builder is you run it and it magically goes and it downloads Windows kubelet.exe, kubeproxy.exe, Rancher Wins, all that stuff. There's just hard-coded URLs that it downloads them. And so no vendor would use those, right? Like, but so every vendor that wants to use image builder has this fundamental problem of, we need to give image builder a JSON file that has the HTTP artifacts to our blessed golden kubelet and kubeproxy and compiled wins distribution and our CNI provider and everything else that you need to put into the Windows image before you create the OVA.
Okay.
Right. And so it's like this sort of, and there's a specific Packer JSON format for that. So it's like kind of like a two-tier problem. First, you have to format it First, you have to create a web server that hosts all this. And then after you do that, you need to put all the artifacts in that web server. And then you need to format the Packer JSON file so that it references those artifacts. So it's like you could do it in like 40 or 50 lines of Go code and just pump that JSON out, and people could run the artifact server, see all the JSON of where the artifacts were. And any vendor then could just use that to give people a canned Windows image builder experience that kind of worked end to end. So selfishly at VMware, we want to do this so our customers can build OVAs. But I think pretty much like we have another upstream use case, which is the developer environments, because we want developers to be able to build from a pull request. And in order to do that, it's a lot easier if we can just literally pull down the kubelet.exe from a Linux VM, as opposed to mounting those directories into a Windows VM, which is what we do now, or installing SSH on a Windows VM, which takes extra time and requires juggling credentials and all that stuff, right?
Yep.
So, and the other alternative is to like run Nginx or something, but like that's just, you'd run Nginx and then you'd have some Python script that ran on Nginx that like told Nginx to serve up a bunch of artifacts, and it's just like a whole bunch. It's like you're doing this big rain dance just to do something that you could do in like 30 lines of code anyways, right? So that's the sales pitch. But does anybody have any objection to us kind of doing this in SIG Windows tools, or does that sound reasonable?
Sounds reasonable.
Cool.
Any objections or concerns? Yeah, and we build all our images and sign them all and everything and push them all to different places, but we use URLs. We use Azure Storage for all the blessed images. We already have an entire pipeline for that. So for the Azure side, we just build that JSON object and just say, this is where you go get containerd, this is where you go get kubelet, this is where you go get those things, and you just pass that to Image Builder. That's how we do it on our side. We don't have to, and all those images are all public and everything. So
Yeah, I think the solution that should probably go here is the hook to provide the JSON file, right? And maybe no specific implementation of like all the other stuff, because it's very similar to how the other scripts are. Like I tell the Kubernetes version, it in the hack scripts, like or in the ADM in the scripts in there, like I give it a version, it just builds the URL and goes pulls it, right? And I can change any version I want. But you're trying to serve up custom artifacts that you built, so you have to build your own. So I think there's two things here, right? There is the JSON format, right? And then there's like an example of a web server for doing local dev work where you can build and publish to that you can pull from, right? But that's just files, right, with the structure. So it would be cool if there was like a reference implementation of a web server that had the same structure from a URL perspective as all the official Kubernetes binaries, right? Because then the JSON file is really simple and it stays the same. It's just, you're just changing the base URL, right? And then you can still construct them in all the scripts place.
Yeah, we could try to replicate the build structure of the Kubernetes builds. That's not a bad idea. I mean, if you want to leave that comment in there, Jamie, we can, we can
I
try
have to
to
think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
I mean, we'll think about it. If you just want to leave the general gist of it in there, we'll at least keep it in mind when, because that's not a hard thing to approximate, right? Like, but yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's hard. I mean, it's up to Perry, really. He's the one that's doing it, but he's not really all that opinionated, I don't think, about the directory structure either. So yeah, if folks want flags or features, like I don't know, I think you're using Viper or something, right? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
What I'll do is I'll come up with a basic work in progress. I'll put a PR out there and then I'll drop the notes in before next SIG Windows, and then people can comment and go through and see what they think. And if you don't want to use it, that's cool too. It's just thought it'd be helpful to people.
Cool. I know Image Builder also, like, we use the core Image Builder, like building the VHDs and things, but there is a vision longer term to create some sort of CLI or something along those lines that helps with some of these like configurations and changing things. So it might be worth chatting with the folks over there to figure out where they're going with that and see how this might fit into there to help ease that.
Yes.
Because right now it is pretty difficult to, it requires a little bit of knowledge to get going with Image Builder.
That's true, actually. I didn't think about the CLI. Might be worth trying something with that. Thanks.
All right. I think that looks like it's the end of the agenda. We have 3 minutes left. I'm going to drop in the link to the containerd performance issue to the chat. Please comment on that. I didn't catch who made that comment earlier, but it's there. Please either, if that's not exactly it, open up another issue on that repository, and that's probably the best one to get some eyes on it.
I've got one more thing. If someone could entertain a couple of minutes. I asked this in SIG Windows, but I'm not sure whether anyone saw it. We're seeing a couple of reports about the SMB CSI driver, and in particular the PowerShell commandlet, which is new SMB global mapping. And the problem that we're seeing is if you include the requires privacy, it doesn't work. But if you remove that flag, it does work, which I'm guessing is something to do with permissions or something to do with the implementation of like with how they're setting it up. But what I was after, or if anyone's got anything for it, is some information on what that commandlet does, because it's not included anywhere in the Microsoft docs. It seems to just have been missed at some point. So there's like new SMB mapping, but there's not an SMB global mapping anywhere in the docs.
Yeah, I don't have any information on that, but maybe I can see if there's Muzz on the call. Maybe follow up with the right team.
Yeah, I am. Barry, I'll forget the details. Could you write
Raise
up
an
somewhere?
issue?
Or, yeah, raise an issue. Just tag it for me. It's just because I can get the storage team, the Windows storage team, get involved here. But yeah.
Is
It'd
it
be good to get the details.
Is it a Kubernetes thing because of this SMB driver, or is it better to put this in Windows containers or
Windows containers? Just and if you can tag it Windows containers on Kubernetes or something like that in that repo. Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
I will do that. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll conclude the meeting, and we'll see you all next week. Oh, did I move the report? I did. Excellent. All right. See y'all.
Thanks a lot.
Everybody. Oh, time for pairing if folks want to hang out. Let me see.